Hi, I'm Pastor Katya Ouchakof, and I'm here at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Verona, Wisconsin, and we're here to talk a little bit about accessibility. Thank you to the folks at Good Shepherd for giving us permission to use their church as an example. We're starting off here in the handicap parking spaces, which as you can see are clearly marked, including with extra space for van accessibility. So if somebody, say, has a wheelchair ramp that needs to come out of a vehicle, there is space for that to happen. And you'll notice that there's no curb, no step up onto the sidewalk. But we're going to head this direction, and you'll see that we are kind of far from the front door. There's a place for drop-off, and there's also step-free entry. There's no curb there on the sidewalk where you would be dropping a person off. So if you're pulling up and leaving somebody at the door, they do only have to walk that far if they've got somebody else driving for them. So we're here at the front door, and there is an automatic button that you can push and the doors will open. You can see also here that there is no post in between these two doors. So if both the doors open, if somebody has a particularly wide wheelchair or just has somebody walking next to them, they'll still be able to get through and into the building. But before we do that, I want to just point out one other thing. You can see me walk over this way. So these parking spots are about half the distance to the door as the actual handicap designated parking spots. So there are closer places to park, but these might be full if you're here for an event, and a disabled person might still need to park at the further position. This is the fellowship area, narthex, lobby, whatever you call it in your church. And you'll notice that we didn't have to go any steps to get into this area. And if you look around, you can see that there are chairs spread out so that there's plenty of space for people to move around and navigate. And there's a coffee area over here that again has step-free access to get up to that coffee bar. All right, we are walking into the worship space now. There is not an automatic door thing on these doors, but whenever there's worship in session, these doors are propped open. But that's just something to be attentive to. Can people get into your building, but can they also get into your worship space? If you come over here, you can see that the aisles are nice and wide in between the sections of chairs. So again, if I am in a wheelchair and it's wide, there's plenty of space for me. Or if I'm in a wheelchair and I have a person with me who is walking, there's enough space for us to even walk next to each other here in this aisle. You can see that there are steps up to the chancel area. Over here there is a hand railing, but this is helpful for somebody who might be a little bit wobbly on their feet, or who might be, say, carrying something as they're walking up the steps so that they can be a little bit more sure-footed. And then on the other side of the chancel area, there's a nice long handicap accessible ramp. So if you've got somebody with a walker or a wheelchair who can't do the steps at all, they can still participate in worship leadership by using this ramp to come up into the chancel area. So from here, looking at the whole sanctuary, you can see that there is again enough space for folks who might need mobility assistance, and that almost everything in this sanctuary is accessible to folks with mobility needs, including access to the altar and the pulpit. So as you can see, this is a multi-story building. There are steps, again, with handrails, but there is also an elevator here that is easy to use, one button. You can only go one direction from here. The elevator is large enough that a wheelchair can fit in here, but it's also small enough that it might only be one wheelchair plus an assistant in the elevator. And all right, let's get right down to it. If we come to a church, we're gonna need to know what the bathrooms look like, right? So they're right over here. We've got men's and women's bathrooms. There's no other people in the church right now, so we're gonna go ahead and go into one of these bathrooms. There's also a sign clearly indicating that there is an all-gender restroom located in the lounge, which is right behind us. We'll look at that in a minute. The handicap accessible stall has a changing table for babies. The stall is large enough that if there was, say, an adult with incontinence issues, they could be changed in here, but it would need to be on the floor. There's not an adult changing table here. But this is great to have a baby changing table in there. And then over here you can see that the sinks are clear underneath so that somebody who's in a wheelchair can get in there to wash their hands. The one downside to this bathroom is that there is not a push button to open the door. So if you are not able to pull or push on the door, you might need some assistance getting in and out. And then the lounge is right over here. I'd also like to point out that there is an AED and a first aid kit here, very clearly visible and accessible so that if anyone has a medical emergency, anybody who's around can help out with that. And then in this lounge, this is a space that the congregation uses. They broadcast worship on this TV on Sunday mornings. So if there are people who have sensory issues, who perhaps can't be in a large space with large crowds, or if there are crying babies and the parents don't want to keep them in the sanctuary, they can come in here and have their own space with comfortable chairs. And then the all-gender restroom is over here. And again, it is handicap accessible. As with the other one, it does require a person to open the door, but there's another changing table in here. And as an all-gender restroom, there are period care products, which is another great way of being accessible to all folks. This is another very important welcoming and accessibility piece that Good Shepherd explicitly has a welcome statement, and it is posted and it is obvious for folks to see so that they know at least what the official policy is of the church and whether or not they are welcome in the building. Overall, this church has done a great job of accessibility, and I hope that you and your congregation are able to get some ideas and have some new considerations for making your building as accessible as possible to as many folks as possible. Thank you.